previous lecture we were discussing about the project design, network, need for network, importance of network, and types of network analysis what we have. Okay, here in this lecture we are going to understand about the origin of two important network techniques, that is PERT and CPM, then the detailed study of PERT and CPM, advantages, limitations, differences, and then we are also going to understand the steps involved in PERT and CPM. Okay, so let us begin with the lecture now. So origin of PERT and CPM is the first topic, where we can understand what is the nature of these two network analysis techniques. One is PERT, which can be expanded as project evaluation and review technique, whereas CPM is critical path method. These are the only two network analysis techniques which we are going to see out of 40 different network analysis techniques which are currently used around the world. Okay, so they are independently developed in USA, and these are the logical extension of Gantt milestone chart. So we need to understand this Gantt milestone chart, then only we will be able to appreciate the particular methods, that is PERT and CPM. So let me draw the Gantt's milestone chart. So this is a Gantt milestone chart. Okay, let me explain the details. This large rectangle signifies the project. Our project is represented inside this rectangle. Inside that, what we have? Small rectangles. These rectangles are nothing but tasks, as I have named here. Task X is first one, task Y, task Z. So the project as a whole is divided into three different tasks, and in each task we have circled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 different milestones. These are milestones or events. If first two events or milestones are achieved, it says that task X is completed, and 3, 4, 5 are completed, then task Y is completed. At the same time, you need to see that 2 and 3 are completed parallelly, that is simultaneously. Similarly, 4, 6, 5, 7 are completed simultaneously, whereas 8 and 1, they are independent, but these are dependent activities. So we can see here the activity we have to perform so as to complete or accomplish some milestones, and the interrelationship between the different events as well as the tasks, which is depicted in this particular Gantt's milestone chart. Okay, the logical extension of this kind of a chart is our PERT and CPM, the modern day network techniques. Okay, that is the understanding. Then coming to the CPM first. CPM was developed in 1957. Okay, and it is mainly focused on the activities themselves and the cost associated with the different activities. The main focus in critical path method is the activities which we want to perform so as to accomplish the goal, and the cost associated with each of the activity. That is the focus area of CPM, whereas PERT was focused on events rather than the activities. So you need to understand the difference between event and activity also, right? So what is an event? Event is a specific goal. Say, I want to get 90% of the marks. So when you achieve this, this is a milestone. For achieving this milestone, you have to study 8 hours per day. So this is the activity. This activity you have to perform so as to achieve this goal. Similarly, you have to perform a number of activities to get into research and development of the project done. Number of activities you have to do so as to done with the marketing, so as to done with the testing and also production. So in this manner we have to do number of activities so as to arrive at the goal. Okay, and the goals can be divided, and these divided goals only we can call events as indicated by this chart. Understood? So that's the difference, the basic difference between CPM and PERT method. One concentrates on cost, another concentrates on events. Okay, so let us go through the very first network technique which we are going to study is project evaluation and review technique, which is a statistical tool which has been developed or designed for analyzing and representing the tasks which are involved in the project or completing the project to achieve the desired goal. Okay, and it works as a method of minimizing delays, interruptions and conflicts by coordinating and synchronizing the various parts of overall jobs. So overall job is your project and it is divided into different parts or different tasks, and PERT gives a means to coordinate and synchronize these activities, and thereby it eliminates delays, interruptions and conflicts in the processes. So that is the way of PERT working. And then PERT is concerned with two concepts. Already we have discussed events and activities. These are the two concepts the PERT is concerned with. Mainly it is about the events. Okay, and what is an event? Event is a specific accomplishment that occurs at a recognizable point of time. And activity is the work required which we have to perform. We have to do some work so as to accomplish the event. So that is the activity. That's why an activity is a work required to complete a specific event. Okay, so these are the two concepts which are very important in PERT. Now coming to the steps involved in the PERT. There are two kinds of steps we are going to see. One is the steps in development of PERT network. The second type is steps involved in PERT analysis. So first we have to develop the network, then we have to analyze that network. That's why there are two different kinds of steps. First one in the development of PERT network is establishment of objectives. We need to know what are the objectives of our project. It might be minor objectives, major objectives. We have to divide those objectives and we have to prioritize the objectives. That is the very first step. The second step is schedule breakdown in great detail. So we have to divide the activities into different tasks, and the details of each task has to be studied. That is the second step. And then both technical and managerial person should begin to work together. Now at this point in time where you have the different activities and how or the nature of activities you have understood, now the technical person in the organization as well as the managerial person has to work together or coordinate together so as to develop the network. And fourth important step is each person who participates in this network development or the PERT network analysis technique should be familiar with the objectives of the project, and also he should be able to understand what is the work or what is his role. So all these things are talking about the training of the personnel who are participating in the PERT technique. Next we have is steps involved in the PERT analysis. Now project network is done we have to analyze this network so as to get a detailed view of our project, how it has to proceed. So the very first step you can see development of the project network. This we have seen, right? These are the steps to develop the project network. After developing, we have the analysis. So we should have the project network before we go for the next steps. So that is done. Next, time estimation. Here in PERT, time is a very important parameter. The complete PERT is dependent on time because, as we have said, it is a event based, not cost and activity based. The PERT is event based technique. So time is important. 3 different time constraints we need to understand for the project. That we'll see in the next slide. But time estimation is the second step. Okay, for different activities, what time it takes to complete a particular activity. In a calendar weeks we need to write down. That is the second step. Next, determination of event slacks and activity floats. We need to determine whether is there any variability of duration in the events. I have set 3 weeks to complete an event or accomplish an event. Is there a possibility of this duration to be changed to 4 weeks, or is it going to complete within 2 weeks? That has to be determined. Okay, and activity floats. Activity float means because activity is floating, event slacks happens. What does it mean? Activity float means the change in the activity duration. Change in the activity duration. It will not complete on time. Some activity will not complete on time. Because of that, the project will take too much of time to complete. So this activity floats will lead to event slacks. So event will not be accomplished. Activity taking too long means event will not meet the deadline. That's why these activity floats are the one which are responsible for event slacks. Okay, that is the third step. So we need to determine in advance. That is the importance here. Then the fourth step is development of project schedule. So it is nothing but listing out of the milestones or the events. So first we will understand what are the slacks and is there any floats in the activities. Then we will schedule, that is the detailed view of which milestone has to accomplish at what point in time. So that has to be decided. And then calculating of variability of duration and probability of completion in given time. So this fifth point or fifth step is going to reiterate the previous 2 steps. Whether we are going to complete the task within the given time or not, that calculation we have to do. For that we require the idea about variability of duration. That is, I have set 10 weeks for completing the project. Is there any possibility I can go for 12 weeks, or is there a possibility I can finish it within 8 weeks? So this variability we need to calculate, keeping in mind all the different activities and the time required for those activities. So that is the last step in PERT analysis. Okay. So now let us understand 3 time estimates used in PERT. The first one is known as the optimistic time estimate, second one is pessimistic time estimate, and the third one is the most likely time estimate. These are the measure of PERT analysis. The basic measure in PERT analysis is the time, and these are the 3 time constraints. The first one, optimistic time. It is the shortest time, assuming that everything goes perfectly. You have assigned the activity with different timing, that is 2 week, 3 week, 4 week. Everything works fine and you will get to your project on time. Okay, as desired, perfectly fine. Ideal case. The time which you have set, ideally, that is called as optimistic time, and it is the shortest time possible. Okay, and the chances of this being true is 1 in 100. That is very low chances of this being true, because there is always unknown factors which will be acting and project may delay or it might complete within time. Okay. So the second one is the pessimistic time, where it is the longest time conceivable, considering all the different kinds of unknown delays. So that is pessimistic time, and the chance of happening this one also 1 in 100. We have considered all the different kinds of delays. This is also not possible always. That's why the chances or probability of this one is also 1 in 100. So they are least likely happening times. And the last one we have is the most likely time. So it would be the best estimate of what normally would occur. So this would be the best time which we can set for our project. We might set pessimistic or optimistic time, but finally this is the most likely time which is going to happen. There will be some delay, there will be some process which will complete early, and thereby this is a compromise between optimistic time and pessimistic time. And the difference between these three time estimates gives us a measure of related uncertainty in the activity. So that's about the PERT method. Now, what are the advantages of PERT? First one, this techniques gives the management the ability to plan the best possible use of resources to achieve a given goal within the overall time and cost limitations. So it gives how to use resources so as to get the goal with limited time and cost. That is the first advantage. Then it helps management to handle uncertainties involved in the project where no standard time data are available, because it is going to estimate three different time estimate, and no prior data is not available also, it will work out fine, and thereby it is going to help us. Then it insists for the right action at the right point in time. So by analyzing the PERT network, managers will come to know what action has to be taken at what point in time so as to get the desired results. These are the advantages of PERT, whereas it has three limitations also. The basic difficulty is the time estimates for the completion of activities if the activities are of non-repetitive type. So we need to measure the time estimates and then average those time estimates. But if the activity is non-repetitive type, then it is difficult to measure. It is difficult to measure. That is the first problem. And then another limitation we have is this technique does not consider resources required at various stages of the project. So at different stages, different resources might be required. It will not concentrate on that. It will only tell about the time at which you have to complete the project. Time estimate it will indicate, that is, it will concentrate on the events, not on the resources which are involved in the activities. Then use of this technique for active control of project was updating and revising the PERT calculations, and this proves to be costly. So anything you want to update in the PERT, you have to do lot of calculations, and this will be a costly affair. So these are the limitations of PERT. Next we have critical path method. So the critical path method is different from PERT technique in a way where the PERT method was a statistical tool, whereas critical path method is not a statistical tool. So let us go through the definition. The critical path method is a project modeling technique that's used by project managers to find important deadlines and deliver a project in time. So it is used to find important deadlines and deliver the project on time. It discusses on the activities or emphasizes on the activities and the costs related with the activities. And what is this critical path? Meaning of critical path is it is the longest distance between the start and the finish, including all the tasks and their duration. So in a network there might be many paths. Say you want to manufacture an product, hardware product, which includes software and hardware. So in software there are many tasks. In producing the hardware there are many other tasks. So they have to run in parallel. So whether the software path going to take longer or the hardware going to take longer, that you need to decide. If software is taking longer than hardware, then hardware time is also included in that. So software path is the one which is critical path. Similarly, if hardware is taking too much of time as compared to the software, then the hardware is the critical path while software will be completed within the stipulated time or within the what you can say critical path time. Okay, so this we'll see in the example. So it is the longest distance. What we need to remember is critical path is the longest distance between the start and the finish, including all the activities and the duration. So there are 6 steps in the CPM. What are those 6 steps? First one, specify each activity. You can see this is similar to PERT only. Their objectives here activity. Specify the each and every activity or task. Then establish dependencies. Establishing dependency means it is interrelation between the tasks, whether they have to be carried out sequentially or they have to be carried out simultaneously. That we have to achieve here. In the next step, we have to draw the network diagram. Once we know the sequence of activities in which they have to be performed, then we can draw the network diagram. After drawing the network diagram, the 4th step we have is estimate activity completion time. So 10 activities I have means I need to set completion time for each and every activity. That is the 4th step. Then identify the critical path. So the longest path which is taking largest time, that is our critical path, that we need to identify. After that, update the critical path diagram to show progress. Here, once we have identified the critical path, it might be taking too long. So because of some of the activities, it might be taking too long to complete. So we need to reduce time in 1 or 2 activities so as to cope up with the other parts of the project, and thereby we can show the progress by updating the timing constraints which are there in the CPM. And also we need to remember, in critical path method we are going to have only one time estimate. It is not like optimistic, pessimistic and the most likely time. Here only one time. It is assumed that all the activities, once we draw the CPM diagram, it will be like all the activities will be completed within the stipulated time given. No calculation required for pessimistic, optimistic and most likely. So that is another difference what we can make out. Okay. Then what are the advantages of CPM? Just like PERT, we have advantages of CPM as well. It helps in ascertaining the time schedule. As I have told, only one time constraint is there. It ascertains the time schedule. So no uncertainties which were there in the PERT because of 3 time estimates. Then with its aid, control by the management is made easy. So critical path is identified means the activities which are there in critical path will be known and we can modify those to get the desired result within time. That's why it helps in controlling. Then it makes better and detailed planning possible. So we know the activities and the completion time of all the activities, and because of that detailed planning is possible. Also, it proves to be a standard method for communicating the project plans, schedules, times and cost performance. So all these aspects will be covered in CPM and it will be a proven standard method for communicating all these ideas about the project. Then we have, it identifies most critical elements and thus more attention can be paid to these activities. So critical path will give us the different activities which are critical in nature. We can concentrate more on those and we can come up with the good results. So that is the another advantage. And the limitations of CPM, 3 limitations we have. One is it fails to incorporate statistical analysis, whereas PERT was a statistical analysis. This fails to incorporate the statistical analysis in determining the time estimates. So it will not concentrate more on the different time estimates, it will say only one time estimate is there. And it operates on the assumption that there is a precise known time for each of the activity in the project, and this is not true in the reality. So it will assume that every activity will be completed within the stipulated time, but which will not happen, and because of that this model might be an approximated model, it is not a perfect model. Then it is difficult to use CPM as a controlling device. Similar to PERT, it is also we cannot use this also as a controlling device, because one must repeat the entire evaluation of the project each time when changes are introduced into the network. Whenever there is a change introduced into the network, a whole lot of calculations we have to do. We have to update the time consumed by each and every activity, and thereby what we can say, it is not fit to be a controlling device. Okay, these are the limitations. Finally, now we have the differences between PERT and CPM. Okay, in PERT the origin is military. In naval systems of USA, this PERT was applied. Okay, whereas the CPM, the origin is industrial. Let me zoom this. So origin is industrial for CPM, whereas the PERT is event oriented approach, the CPM is an activity oriented system. It is based on the activities, and this one event means the particular accomplishments in a task. Then it allows for uncertainty. PERT allows for uncertainty, whereas CPM does not allow any uncertainty. And the fourth difference is it has 3 time estimates that we have studied: optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely time estimates are there in PERT, whereas in CPM it is not there. It is following only one time estimate for the entire project. Whereas the PERT is a probabilistic model with uncertainty in activity duration. In the CPM, it is a deterministic model. It assumes that every activity is completed within the stipulated time. Then we have in the PERT, it does not demarcate between critical and non-critical activities. PERT does not demarcate, whereas critical path method itself tells that it markets or demarcates between the critical activities and non-critical activities. That is the difference. And then it is especially suitable when the high prediction is required in time estimates. So whenever there is a project which requires the accurate precision time durations for each and every activities, then we have to go for PERT. Whereas this is the CPM is suitable when the reasonable prediction is required. No high precision required, reasonable prediction is required means you can go for CPM. And then we have PERT time average. Time average means we have 3 time estimates. So we have to arrive at a common conclusion. There we need to average these 3 times to get a minimum time which is actually required for completing the project. Whereas time averaging is not involved because only one time constant is there. And this concept, this uses the concept of crashing. The concept of crashing is not applied. Concept of crashing is not applied, whereas in CPM, concept of crashing is applied. And the final difference is it is time based, whereas the CPM is cost based. So this is we started with this one, and I hope we are ending at this point only. So this is time based. PERT is based on 3 time estimates, whereas CPM is based on the cost. Cost means indirectly the activities which we are going to perform is involving the cost of resource, cost of money, cost of machinery. All those things will be indicated here. Okay, so that's about the difference between PERT and CPM. Let us try to see an example. This is an example of a hardware product design. It includes hardware design, software design, and the manual for using the product. So three different processes need to take place in parallel or simultaneously they have to be followed. So the network of that is given. It includes PERT and CPM both. Let me zoom a bit here. So you can see here the circles are there. This is the PERT network. Along with that, CPM is included in the network in this particular chart for an hardware product design. That is, you start with your idea of project, complete and come up with a product involving hardware with a software installed and a manual to use it. So that is the idea here, and the network of that is drawn here. The network of that is drawn here. There are number of events. The circles indicate the events, arrows indicates the activities, and the time for each of the activities also given. The duration for each of the activity needs to be given, that is mentioned here. So you can see here 1 to 2 the activities formalize the specifications. It is given 6 weeks. So in 6 weeks you have to formalize the specifications. If it is completed, then event 2 take place. First event is starting of the project. Second event, specifications finalized. Now it splits into what? This path is hardware design, this path is software design, this is the layout of the manual path. That is, here the manual to understand the working and usage of the particular hardware is going through this path. The requirement of the activities will go through this path, whereas software design goes through this path, hardware design this path. And in hardware design also there are number of activities. Say design hardware, breadboard hardware, test hardware, then implement with the software, like that. Similarly, here design software, it only takes 6 weeks, whereas design hardware 4 weeks, breadboard hardware 2 weeks, and test hardware 3 weeks. Likewise, if you go on increasing in the next few steps, you can see after this event, software completion will take 4 weeks, whereas release of hardware 2 weeks. After that, manufacturing of hardware for mass production 4 weeks, release of software requires 1 week. And if we calculate all the time required for this one path, that is hardware design and implementing with software, then the second path and the third path, if we trace that, we will get to know that in one path particularly we are taking too long, and that path is indicated by red arrows, whereas the other two paths are not longer enough as compared to the first one. Okay, so this is our critical path. This is the critical path, that is path having the events. You can see the events 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 4 to 2 to 3, 3 to 5, 6, 7 and 11. That completes the product or the project. So this path is a critical path because if you add all these weeks, it is exceeding other two paths. Understood? So this gives the complete idea of how a project can be executed. Okay, so that's all about the network techniques. In the next class, we will discuss on the business model. Okay.